like Poirot has always been on the TV. So I think
works for me.
Yeah, there's something very soothing about that, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So yeah, we are live now, and hopefully people will start sort of filtering in. I don't usually kind of start with questions and things like straight off the bat because it usually takes people a second to be
No problem.
like to sort of arrive.
No problem.
But yeah, I always really enjoy these sessions. So hello to anyone who's here.
Have you got a favourite Poirot, Emily? Have you, as in like a like portrayal of Poirot? Because I know that this has become a thing now, apparently.
Oh yeah, like the different iterations of Poirot.
Yeah.
Oh, see now, okay. This is one of those things where it's always something I watched when I was little, and I never knew any actors' names.
Right.
So like kind of now I'm trying to think, but it's
Well, I watched
everyone else is good.
This is the thing, right? So we were talking about Indiana Jones before before we went live. Like one of the trailers was for the new Poirot with Kenneth Branagh.
Yeah. That's right, and people are like really pleasantly surprised by like the
big
trailer,
time.
right?
But this new one it looks more like it's in the sort of horror vein, and like to the point where at the end he's only revealed at the end of the trailer, and we were like, my wife and I were like, oh, it's the third in Branagh's Poirot's. I can't remember the name. The name's different. I'm pretty sure. I'm almost certain the name of the film is different from the book that it's based on. It's like something like A Death in Venice or something like that, but the novel's called something completely different. But it's proper. It's like proper, proper Saw stuff. That's what the trailer lets it.
Oh gosh, that's certainly not the Poirot I grew up watching when I was 5 years old.
Not quite the Sunday nights on ITV at 8 p.m. Is it? ITV3 now.
No, not at all. Hi everyone that's here, by the way. Hi Francesca, Anthony, Irene. Thank you so much for coming. We were just chatting about Poirot because I was thinking if as people arrive, please do say hello in the chat, and if you'd like to, we would be interested to know, to sort of kick things off, if you could go to dinner with one kind of character from a murder mystery, be that a standalone or a series, it could be a book or a film or a TV series, who would it be? And I was saying it would probably be Poirot for me, because there's something like very comforting about Poirot to me. Like it's definitely something I can sort of like tune out to and just enjoy, like let the story wash over me. And I think we were saying who's my favorite iteration of Poirot. We've got Columbo there, Francesca. Ooh, good choice.
That's a good call. See, the problem with going to dinner with people that investigate murders as their job or what they do in the spare time is that you'd constantly be on edge. You constantly think, oh my God, what's going to happen? Like the classic one is Jessica Fletcher, right? Like, as soon as you see Jessica Fletcher from Murder, She Wrote enter the room, you have to get out of that room as fast as you can because someone is going to wind up dead, right?
Yeah, the second she like raises an eyebrow, you think, oh my gosh, my food is poisoned. I can't be here. Yeah, I'm in the firing line.
I did love, there was I can't remember who it was. There was a comedian a couple of months ago who took like a sort of critical, a sort of pastiche critical look at Jessica Fletcher's rise from a completely unknown author to literally a bestseller overnight. Wow, and I think it's in the pilot episode where she cycles past her local bookshop and she sees a picture of herself, and on the top of it, it's like number 3 bestseller. And the bookshop owner's taking the sign down, and she's a bit like, that was nice while it lasted. And he replaces the sign with number 1 bestseller.
Number 1.
And it's like the book's only been out 2 days,
Oh my
fantastic. Gosh. I should say that I do love Jessica Fletcher and Murder, She Wrote, and I would never ever turn it off if it's on, because again, a bit like your granddad, Emily, my great aunts and my gran, and funnily enough, my one of the very, very first things that my wife ever bought when we were as a couple was a Murder, She Wrote DVD collection for her late grandmother for her birthday. And it's like, I didn't even know these things. I thought these things were on TV so much that you actually didn't ever need them on DVD. But lo and behold, this thing was like a crate. This thing was about that size, and there was about 40 discs in it. So there you go. Aging myself dreadfully here, but there you are.
Yeah, no, it's, I mean, if they're kind of special to you, it can be quite nice to have the physical copy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hello to everyone in the chat. We've got Julie, hello, Claire, Carol, Andrea. Anthony made a really good comment. It's like Midsummer, so if Barnaby's wife joins your village craft group, you got to get out. You always, you don't want to be too close. Yeah.
massive body count in Midsummer, right? Yeah.
Yeah, surprised there's anyone left there. Hi Effie, it's good to see everyone in the chat. Things are kind of, we've got a few more people joining now. So yes, for all those who kind of have joined while we've been talking about that, we were sort of kicking off our conversation by saying, if you could go to dinner with one sort of character from any kind of murder mystery or crime fiction, who would it be? I was saying Poirot, and then we were saying, but you would be quite stressed being at a dinner with like a detective, because usually murder follows them around, or they follow it around. No, I'm not too sure which way it goes.
Chicken and egg.
Yes, exactly. But I mean, who would you choose, Jonathan? We started off with me.
See, the thing was, I was stalling for time as I was trying to think of a really, really good answer, and I've not
It
come
was
up with
subtle.
one, which is pathetic, really. I don't know. I think Sherlock Holmes is a classic, as classic a detective as you can get, really. And I'm trying to sort of usurp the notion that some trouble might be there, because you've got like, he's always hired, doesn't he? He's always, he doesn't sort of walk into the trouble. He's always hired. So at the very least, we might be able to get dinner before someone else comes in. I don't know what version though. That's the thing. We're talking about versions of detectives and things. In fact, Sherlock was on TV last night. It was the first time that I'd seen it literally in years. And Benedict Cumberbatch, obviously, has gone on to do all these massive. I mean, he was a massive star at the time, but he's gone on to do all these mega massive stars, and you actually forget how young he is in it, or he certainly looks in it. And he's very good. But I don't know. I quite like my Holmes quite traditional. I quite like the Deerstalker and the kind of smoky Victorian. Jeremy Brett was always, again, talking about shows that are never off. ITV3, a staple of ITV3 and ITV4 is the Jeremy Brett Sherlock Holmes stuff from the 80s and 90s. And again, I remember growing up actually in that sort of that booming presence always being on the TV. Basil Rathbone, I suppose, is the sort of archetypal looking Holmes, but I think those movies were made in the 40s, and I think they're set in the 40s as well. They're more contemporary for the age. Oh, I don't know. There's so many, isn't there? There's so many great detectives. That's the thing. There's too many. It's less a dinner, more like a banquet, right?
Yeah. It's a cheat of an answer, but I'll take it. Too many.
I couldn't think of it.
Well, numbers seem to have sort of settled a bit in the chat. We've got a few people here, so I thought maybe we could sort of get going. So to anyone who may have just sort of stumbled here without particularly necessarily knowing who I'm with, I'm just going to give a really brief kind of intro to Jonathan Whitelaw, who is my lovely guest today. So Jonathan is an author, an award-winning journalist and broadcaster, and author of the Bingo Hall Detectives, which is the first in a cozy crime series, of which there are now 2 books. It actually was shortlisted for the Listening Books Members' Choice Award 2022. Listening Books is the group that I represent, if my kind of subtle background didn't do that for you. So Listening Books, we are an audiobook lending charity in the UK, and our services for anyone who might find it difficult to read or hold a book due to an illness, mental health condition, disability, or learning difficulty. And we love to organise these sessions with some of our favourite authors so that our members can chat to them and vice versa. It's always a really lovely time to just be able to talk to everyone. I want to, before I get started, give a big thanks to Virtual Village Hall for helping us host this session. So, right, let's begin. So if anyone has any questions for Jonathan, please do put them in the chat, and we'll try to get round to as many as we can. So please start popping them in the chat, and we will try and get those answered. But while we're waiting for those to come through, Jonathan, for anyone who may not have read or listened to your books yet, I'm thinking specifically the Bingo Hall Detectives. What should they know about this book and, in fact, this series? Could you give us like a brief little intro to that, please?
Of course, certainly. Thank you very much for having me. Obviously, it's a delight to be here. Very, very important cause, hugely close cause to my heart, as we've had sort of sight difficulties and things like that throughout the years. So it's delighted to be here. I was delighted, obviously, to be shortlisted last year, and yeah, it's a great cause that I'm always happy to do my bit for. The Bingo Hall Detectives is set in the Lake District in Cumbria, and it follows the misadventures, I suppose, of a mother-in-law and son-in-law amateur detective duo, Amita and Jason, who in the Bingo Hall Detectives are on the hunt for the killer of one of Amita's fellow Penrith Bingo Club members, Madeline Frobisher, who is found at the back of her crumbling mansion just north of Ullswater Lake, with an apparent broken neck from a dreadful fall while she was up cleaning the windows. But our well-to-do, well-heeled Amita doesn't think that it was an accident, then there might be something a bit more suspicious at play. And of course, the pair of them, she recruits her son-in-law, who's an out-of-work journalist, Jason, to try and catch this scurrilous murderer who is running around the Lake District causing all kinds of mayhem and mischief. And that's really where we start the adventure, start the first book anyway. And the pair of them, Amita and Jason, it's hard. I don't want to say that they don't get on, but they do, but they don't get on, right? And it's one of those things where I think that's a better way of putting it, Emily. Yeah, absolutely. It's a complicated relationship that the pair of them have got, because it's the mother-in-law and son-in-law relationship throughout time has always been complicated, and or any sort of in-law relationship, in fact. And I think that the way that the sort of idea came to be that if you look at it as a sort of Venn diagram, you've got the in-law here, and then the person in the middle who's either the daughter, the son, or the wife, or the husband. You think about those two people that are their own little circles, and usually, more often than not, it's not always the case, but more often than not, you find that the in-laws would never really spend any time with each other. There's not people that they would necessarily hang around with.
Yeah.
And they're brought together by this one person in the center of it, and brought together forever, potentially. And I always like the idea of conflict between characters, and particularly characters who are having to put their differences aside to pull towards a common goal. In this case, catch a killer. And the idea from it came. This is where I always say. Actually, do you know what? My mother-in-law is perfectly lovely, and I've got a less complicated relationship with my mother-in-law than I think Jason and Amita do. But the idea, actually, funnily enough, came about. My mother-in-law's Northern Irish, and we were over at hers for Easter, I think, one year, years and years ago. And this old pop star came on the TV. This old Irish pop star came on the TV, and I don't know, honestly, I don't know where it came from, Emily, but this sort of lightning bolt hit me in the back of the head, and I turned to my mother-in-law, Margaret, and I said, Margaret, what would happen if you and I had to team up together to catch the murderer of this pop star? Oh. And with no word of a lie, she said there'd be two more murders, namely yours and mine, long before we caught the killer, Jonathan. And that was it. That's where it came from, and I put it in a drawer and didn't really think about it for maybe about 3-4 years. And then the idea came back to me, and lo and behold, here we are. The second book's out. The third book's with my editor. It's grown arms and legs, as they say.
Wow, congratulations. That's brilliant. I mean, what a growth. I mean, so
I know.
I don't know whether that was sort of you sort of tying in with the first question that we have in the chat or not, but actually we've got Francesca, who has asked, who is the inspiration behind Amita, and do you write characters based on people you've met? So, I mean, is your mother-in-law the pure kind of inspiration for Amita, or is there anything else there?
Yes and no. It's a good question. It's a good question. I think, I mean, well, if you look at it from the other side of the coin, like Jason being an out-of-work journalist, Jason's a lot better journalist than I ever was. That wouldn't be hard, because he's a journalist that's a sort of purist journalist. You know, he's out there to do the big stories, and even though he's stuck in a local paper and it's all about giant marrows and things like that, he is at heart a very, very good journalist. And I don't think I ever was, but that's by the by. I think with Amita, one of the big things that I wanted to do with this series was not go down the route of stereotypes when it comes to mother-in-laws and son-in-laws, and also, you know, members of older members of society. So one of the big sort of flips on it is that Jason's incredibly technophobic. and just doesn't get it, right? He's a 40-year-old man, 41-year-old man, something like that at the start of the series, and he just doesn't get Facebook, he doesn't get WhatsApp, he doesn't understand it, he doesn't want to understand it, more importantly. Whereas Amita, who's 70, in her 70s, is the complete opposite. She's completely hooked in with, as are all the other members of the Penrith Bingo Club and beyond, all the committees that she's part of, all the societies. They're all there, and they're all on WhatsApp, and they're all on Facebook groups, and they're all doing live streams and stuff like that. So I was determined to make that sort of element of the relationship, mostly because you can it flips maybe a sort of a prejudice on its head, so to speak, or a negative stereotype, so to speak. But also it creates a nice conflict, and it's a cozy crime, and you want a little bit of humor in there, and you want this sort of running gag, or I wanted this sort of running gag that Amita's a lot better at tech than Jason is. Now, the tech part of it is very much from me, because as we've been discussing this morning, actually, before we came on air, that I'm dreadful with it, and I'm dreadfully frightened by it. So and ironically, I was an online journalist for 12 years, so you'd think I would know by now, right? You would think I would be better at it, but as we said, Jason's a lot better journalist than I was. So yeah. And then I think you pick up little things from people that you know in real life or you don't know in real life, and whether it's a little phrase or a little habit. Would you believe I've just finished last night or night before, reading Stephen King's On Writing, so his sort of semi-biographical but also sort of writing how to write book, and he mentions that all the time. He says in the sort of nuts and bolts of it is that the best writers are readers, but they're also observers. They're people that can pick up little things, and even if you're crafting a character, and I do it myself actually. I teach specifically crime writing workshops and character workshops here in Canada. And I always say this to the students. I always say, like, you can have your character, that's great, but you want to put the meat on the bones, and the meat on the bones of your characters tend to be the little things that we all do, right? So I think Stephen King mentions, if you have a neighbor who picks his nose every time he goes to collect the mail, that might never actually make it into a book. It might never be said explicitly, but if you have in your head, that's what this character does, that's the meat on the bones, right? That's what people do. And we're all readers. And we like, the characters that we remember are the ones that have got flaws, are the ones that are just like us, and have got terrible habits, nasty habits, and things like that. So that's the great thing about writing cozy crime, is that you can have a lot of fun with it. You have a character who picks his nose or picks her nose, and it's not out of place. You can explore the sort of fun and the disgust that people can have with that sort of stuff without it being, blatantly sort of in awful, that type of thing.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of characters with horrible habits or behaviors, we have a question about D.I. Orby. So we have Paz Barling has asked, my question is, does D.I. Orby make a return in the Village Hall Vendetta? Or is this top secret information for those who haven't read it?
Well, he's not in the Village Hall Vendetta. I'm allowed to say that because it's out. Watch this space. D.I. Orby. I think I've said this before. D.I. Orby is an amalgamation of a lot of editors that I worked with, as in like newspaper editors that I worked with, particularly early on in my career. So he's a horrible man, quite frankly. he's pretty horrible. He's lifted straight out of like the Sweeney. We're fairly rattling through these ITV dramas today. It's we've had Murder She Wrote, we've had Poirot, we've had Sherlock Holmes, now we've got the Sweeney. So it's what's next? He's lifted straight out of that era. He's ready to retire when we meet him in the Bingo Hall Detectives, and he is ready to retire. But he's a dinosaur from a completely different age, and when I created him, there are elements of what he said. He doesn't get on with Jason, obviously, from the off. But there are elements of him that I lifted from old newspaper editors that I worked with, because that was the thing. Like, when I first started as a journalist, I was painfully young, and it feels like 1,000 years ago, by the way. It was 1,000 years ago. But we used to have I came into journalism at a time when digital journalism and the online desk was still a relatively new thing, a relatively new feature in the newsroom. So we had I was at that sort of crossroads point where media outlets were deciding where they were going to put their future, essentially. So you still had quite a lot of journalists who'd been in the game for 40 plus years who, weren't either didn't know or weren't interested in the future because their retirement was coming up. And I always remember one who will remain nameless used to come into the newsroom every morning. Now, bearing in mind that the online desk, we never ever closed. We were open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365. And this guy, I think he was an editor he'd been the main editor, and now he was like an editor of a smaller department. And he used to come in and he would say, "Morning, children." That's how he used to address us on the online department. Now, I was 24 or something like that when I started. I had a degree, I'd worked in politics at that point when I came in. And it was the same for my colleagues. None of my colleagues were still at school. They weren't on work experience. They all had first class honours degrees in journalism and stuff like that. So politics and things. And he used to come in, "Morning, children," and just that sort of that. And it's making my teeth itch thinking about it because it really mugged me off. So just that. I mean, he didn't. In fairness, he retired about 6 months after we started, and then the rest of them sort of slowly went, and it wasn't nice. I'm laughing now looking back on it 12 years ago, 11 and a half years ago, or what have you, but it's only because over a decade has passed. I very much wasn't laughing at the time. That wasn't the worst thing he called us, by the way. There was plenty worse. So someone like Albie is very much from that generation of old school, old department, old institution. Who just doesn't get it and doesn't want to get it and not interested in getting it. So he feels like, again, hopefully I have a bit of fun with it, because I think humor is a very, very important part of healing.
Yeah.
And putting these sorts of things behind us. So I've had a couple of ideas as to how he might make a return. Not in the Village Hall Vendetta, though.
Sure, because what a character that's just in as much in the sense that you detest him, he's many people's favorite character because he's so much fun. It's and kind of in the audiobook, kind of the voicing and the way that Sid Seigar kind of brings into life is just unreal. And actually we've got Claire asking, does Sid Seigar narrate the Village Hall Vendetta as well?
He does, yes. He does a splendid job of it. I've been very, very lucky, very, very lucky that that everyone at Harper North has been so behind it, and Sid was wonderful. So I did. The weird thing is, like, I know a lot of writers will have screeds and screeds and screeds of notes as to what their characters are like, how they look, how they sound, all that kind of stuff, what they wear and things like that. And I don't. I mean, I tend to have a picture of them in my head, but I don't hear them. I don't hear what their voices are like. I can hear their voice, but I don't. This is going to sound odd, but I don't hear what it sounds like. I can hear their voice. I can hear what they would say and things like that, but I don't hear their voice. I don't hear what it sounds like. And when Sid was picked to do the Bingo Hall Detectives, he sent me a text, or he phoned me, I beg your pardon. He phoned me and he said, "Jonathan, what are you thinking with these characters? What's the thinking with their kind of accents and things like that?" And I was like, "Oh God, I don't know. I said, I haven't thought about this." And he was wonderful, obviously, because he's an actor and he knows all these kind of things. So he said, "Right, okay, give me 20 minutes, Jonathan, and I'll send you something over. Send you what I
20
think."
minutes.
20 minutes, right? So 15 minutes later, he sends me over a text message with an audio file, and it's like a 3.5 minute audio file. And he said, "Jonathan, this is a very, I've not edited this. I've just taken a random section from the book, and this is what I think it is." And honestly, Emily, he couldn't have picked a harder part to pick. So he'd picked something from about 3/4 of the way through, I think. And it was Jason, Amita, Albie, and a bit of narration. So 4 very, very different voices, 4 distinctly different voices. And I sat completely agog listening to this 3-minute clip or whatever it was. And that's the thing. He said, "Give me 20 minutes. He came back 15 minutes and the clip was 3 minutes long. So it must have only taken him, whatever it was.
Wow.
And I went back to him and I said, "Listen, you've absolutely nailed it. You have nailed it. You don't need me in any way, shape, or form. You know exactly what you're doing. you've got it. You go ahead and you work with it. And that's it. And I've been very, very, very lucky, and I continue to get compliments. I don't know why I'm getting compliments. It's all said. I joke about this. I've been told off. By Jen, my editor, to stop saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway because it is true. Like, all the best bits about the Bingo Hall Detective series, it's not me that does them. I only write them, right? But like the title, the narration by Sid, the little bingo numbers and the page numbers and things like that, like, that's all by my wonderful editor and the wonderful team at Harper North that does all that. They just poke me on, and I go on stage and talk about it and take all the credit, you know.
The Bingo Hall Detectives is obviously it's a team collaboration, as is any book, realistically.
Yeah.
But you definitely sell yourself too short, because without you, we
Oh,
wouldn't have
you.
this. Without you and your mother-in-law, we wouldn't have the Bingo Hall Detectives. We wouldn't have these amazing characters. And
Thank you.
Francesca has sent a brilliant question. I'm in love with this question. Francesca asks, you have a picture of your characters in your head as part of you building them. Do you know particularities of their personalities? So what would they order in a pub? What's their chippy order? What's their favorite high street shop? And she says amateur is M&S, I reckon. Which
Oh, yes.
I see that.
Yes, yeah.
Sainsbury's
Amateur.
at a push.
Yeah, and only like the top end Sainsbury's own
Yeah.
brand. It's not. She's not going to get the budget stuff that I unfortunately fuel myself with. Yeah, yeah, M&S, maybe a bit of Waitrose in there if she wants to splurge, if she's not spent all her pension money. I think there's a bit of Waitrose in there as well. When it's
Francesca
Jason, I
agrees.
think
Yeah.
Jason's a pint of lager, isn't he? Pint of lager and a packet of McCoy's crisps and
Oh yeah.
a Tesco meal deal. Very much like myself. Very much like myself. Yeah, Tesco meal deal. I'll do him £3, £3.50 if he's forgotten his Tesco club card. There are other supermarkets available, obviously, with meal deals, but that's the one that I always remember. Oh, that's it. That's a great question. Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's important. I think it's important for the author to know these things, whether they ever come out in the actual finished book or what have you. I think it's important for the author to know these types of levels to go with the character. So one of the exercises that I always get my kind of students in the workshops to do is take any character. You should do it with every character, really, and imagine what they did on their 8th birthday, because the 8th birthday is a sort of pivotal moment in someone's life. Good and bad. It doesn't have to be. Doesn't always. I mean, that's the thing about writing crime, is that inherently you always think of all the worst things that could ever happen to someone, because
tragedy on the 8th
exactly.
birthday. Yeah,
but good stuff as well. You know, did they have a fantastic birthday? Did all their friends turn up? Did nobody turn up? Was it spent with their grandparents? Was it spent with their mum, dad, whatever? And there's something really, really important about the 8th birthday and the 8th year of someone's life, because you're old enough to not be a toddler, and you kind of know, and you're learning lots of things at school, but you're also not so old that you're a moody teenager as I was. I'm a moody adult, right enough, but a moody teenager too. So it's a really, really pivotal point. And the point of the exercise is not necessarily what actually happened on the 8th birthday, but it's to get aspiring writers to start thinking about the levels at which you need to go to craft characters that are believable, that are likable, that are dislikable, and always be asking the question why. And I do that with all my characters, certainly all the main characters. And when you're in sort of 3 books in, you become very, very comfortable with the characters. You know automatically. Joe Abercrombie is a wonderful fantasy writer, and I've had the privilege of interviewing him, actually, and hosting him as well, as an author for his various kind of books launches and stuff. And I remember someone asked a question in the audience one night that I was hosting him about character and how do you go about crafting that character. And his answer was wonderful, and it's always stuck with me. He said, I want to get to that stage where when I write dialogue for a character or characters, it's just like me earwigging in a conversation between 2 other people. It all comes out of me. Of course, it all comes out of me, but I'm so comfortable with these characters, and I know them back to front, in and out, up and down, that it just feels like I'm in the next room listening to these people, or whatever. And I think that's always stuck with me, and I think it's important to get to that stage as a writer, is that you do know these characters. And of course, this sort of stuff comes with practice, and it comes with the more time that you spend with characters. And I always say that, never ever be afraid to have a massive backstory for any of your characters. You might never use any of it, but if you know it, it inherently is going to bleed into your writing. And I try and do that with Jason and Amata and the rest of the Bingo Club, and also your villains. Also the villains of the piece. You want believable villains, and you want to understand the motivation of the villain. That's one of the reasons that crime fiction is so popular, is trying to get into the head space of someone who could commit the most horrible things, and even if it's cozy, police procedural, psychological thriller, historical, whatever, it's always the same, and trying to understand why, asking that question, why, you as the writer, the reader, obviously, of the product, it's good fun. It's really good fun.
Yeah, we've got Anthony in the comments kind of agreeing with you, saying, yes, psychologists have said that 7 to 8 years old is when children first truly develop a sense of kind of individual self. And they start to understand that other people in the world have their own minds and their own viewpoints.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, saying that very much makes sense. I think that's
Absolutely
a really good tip for kind of budding writers, if we have any in the group. And actually, I sort of wanted to ask you a little bit more about your writing process, if that's okay. So crime, I'm always really curious when I talk to kind of crime authors, whether that is kind of more like police procedural, whether that's kind of quite gritty crime or cozy crime, but like, how do you plot the sequence of events? Do you really plot carefully before you start writing, or do you sort of write more by the seat of your pants? Kind of, what's your procedure?
I'm going to be a dreadful cop-out. Although, actually, well, I'll give my answer first, but just going back to what Stephen King was saying, because he's thrown a metaphorical hand grenade into my whole process now, and it's like, well, if Stephen King says it, he's sold a couple of
you got to listen. Yeah.
So what I tend to work from before I sit down and do any project is maybe a 2-page synopsis. Usually no more than 2 pages, because I think if it gets to sort of 2 pages long, you're getting into that realm of, actually, why have you not just sat down and written the book? And that's kind of what Stephen King says, actually, in On Writing, is that, all the stuff that takes you away from actually writing it takes you away from actually writing the book. But I like to work from, or I have historically worked from, no more than a 2-page synopsis. And what that'll do is it'll outline the sort of main points of the plot. So how do we get Jason and Amata into the thick of the action? What is the action? Who's involved? Who's dead, invariably? The odd twists, who gets introduced, and then of course at the end how it's resolved. But I try to leave as much space as I can in between those paragraphs, because for me that's where the book comes alive. That's where the characters come alive. So we're talking about, having this big backstory and all this research done before you sit down and write a word. But actually, I found that, the little curiosities with not just Jason and Amata, but all the rest of the Penrith Bingo Club and Albie and the villains as well. That stuff comes alive as I'm writing it, and you get to know the characters, and you get to, you become more confident as a writer with spending time with these people. So again, we mentioned it at the top of the show, something like a little curiosity that someone picks their nose every time they go to collect the mail, something like that. These types of things tend to come to me as I'm writing it, and that will come about in between these sort of paragraphs of what the actual story is. But I tend to use it more as a roadmap, because invariably when I get 40,000 words in and I go, oh my God, what is this book all about? I've completely forgotten. At least I can go back to the roadmap and go, oh yeah, of course. Yeah. But I mean, by that point, it might be 3-4 months old. It might be 6 months old. It might be years old. And again, I always try and to stay as flexible as I can, because I think that's what writing is. I think one of the big differences I've found between being a non-published writer and being a published writer, being a professional writer, is that you have to be flexible. Not just obviously with the editing process and working with other people, as I mentioned, over title, covers and sales and all the rest of it. It does genuinely take a village to put a book on the shelf. But being flexible with yourself as a writer, I think being flexible enough to go, actually, do you know what? I don't think this is working. I don't think this is working for me. I don't think my character would say this. I don't think, it can be anything. It can really be anything. You've got to be flexible with everything when it comes to the writing, because I think that's what a lot of people find. I think that's where writer's block comes from. I know it certainly does for me. Is that I've maybe written myself into a hole. Could have been maybe a bit more flexible. and then you feel that you've got that drudge where you've got, when you sit back down and go, oh God, I'm back at this bit and I couldn't resolve it the last time I sat down, and now I've got to try and resolve it again. Flexibility, I think, is the key. And again, it becomes more apparent when you're working with editors and they say, actually, Jonathan, maybe do this or tone that down or ramp that up. And that's an integral part of the business. That's an integral part of the job. You've got to be able to do that. But yeah, I think, and I use it as a roadmap. You know, I think I plot it out just so that I always do it. I say all that, of course. The Bingo Hall Detectives had a very, very different ending in my roadmap, right up until the point where we get to the sort of reveal. Because no spoilers, but the relationship between the relationship between the killer and the victim was very, very different in the original plan.
Wow.
And it remained completely different all the way up until literally I sat down to write the chapter that it's the big, you know, it's the Poirot, everyone in the drawing room of the mansion, the country house. So there was obviously a degree of rewriting that had to be done when I decided, and that was just a risk. I mean, that was the thing. Like I'd sent the synopsis over to my publisher. They were happy with it, and it got to it, and I thought, do you know what? I'm going to take a bit of a risk here. And it's like, I mean, as we're talking about flexibility, what's the worst case scenario? Worst case scenario is that they hate it and we just go back to what was already agreed. Fine. You know, it's only a little bit working. But I decided to go down, take a right instead of a left. And that's the thing as well with being a crime writer, is invariably you want to keep readers interested right up until the end, and you want to have them on the edge of their seat. And if I didn't think of this until the very last minute, then there's a very, very good chance that the readers didn't see it coming either. So I don't know. Maybe that's sort of back of the fag packet thinking. I think
you were 2 steps ahead of your own self. That's quite impressive. I mean,
never happened again, Emily. It never likely is going to happen again. I'm not that clever, unfortunately.
One off. Well, Claire has actually asked. So you talking about your writing process, and you also mentioned that you run writing workshops as well. Just Claire wanted to know: do you enjoy sharing your knowledge about writing? Like, is it rewarding? Do you like working with other writers?
Absolutely, yeah. It's one of the absolute privileges of being a full-time writer, is that you get to do these sorts of things. People think you know what you're talking about, which is very kind of them, and you try and live up to that expectation. But one of the really, really special things that I found, because the thing was, I didn't really do them in the UK. It wasn't until I moved to Canada and I had the time to do them, and I had the capacity to do them. And one of the really, really nice things that I've learned over the last year to 13, 14 months or so is that the quality is always really, really high when it comes to the students, because I get them to do exercises both in class and for the next week, and I'm constantly impressed with the talent that's out there, and the undiscovered talent, quite frankly. And actually, what you tend to find is that while I can sit and preach about character and character development and plot and all the mechanics it takes to write a crime novel or put together a detective or a villain or whatever, you know, the vast majority of the students know how to do this already. It's actually just a confidence thing. It's just having that confidence in their own writing to see a project all the way through to the end, 80,000, 90,000 words, or even just basic things like knowing that a crime novel or indeed any novel tends to start at around about 80,000, 90,000 words. You know, just these little kind of tidbits that you almost take for granted if you work in the industry. And also that transparency within the industry as well. Like, usually what I tend to do is with my classes, we'll spend, if it's like say an 8-week course, we'll spend 7.5 of those weeks talking about the mechanics of whatever the class is, whether it's crime writing, cozy crime writing, or what have you. And then the second half of the penultimate session and the final session, I tend to use as an opportunity to talk about the industry. So one of the big things that I'm keen on is education. And it's based entirely on experience. You know, when I was an unpublished author and an aspiring writer, if I'd paid more attention and learned more about the industry, and it is an industry, right? Yeah. It's a multi-billion-pound global industry. If I'd learned and given it the respect that it is due, long before I started sending out my first manuscripts, then I probably would have become a writer a lot quicker. In fact, but it's simple things, right? It's simple things like knowing things like, a manuscript needs to be between 80 and 90,000 words. It's knowing that if you approach an agent, make sure that the agent is open, first and foremost, open to submissions. And secondly, that's what they're looking for is what you're sending them. Like, don't send a sci-fi agent a crime novel, or if they're not open to romance, don't send them that, don't send them your 120,000 word epic romance novel. And getting to know people, and it's a people-based industry as well. And of course, there's always that debate between art versus business and things. But it's where those two collide. And like I said, it's an absolute privilege to be able to pass on that information. And I thoroughly enjoy doing it. And if I can give anybody any sort of leg up when it comes to it, the thing about writing is, right, and being a professional writer, there's no silver bullet. There's no way that someone can say, this is how you become a New York Times or a Sunday Times bestseller. Most of the New York Times and Sunday Times bestsellers, authors and publishers don't know how they became that. It's so subjective. Right? But that's the good thing as well. And I always say that as well. Like, there's a sort of old adage that there's only so many stories that can be told, and the majority of them, if not all of them, have been told already. I always say to kind of aspiring writers, you've not told them yet. I can give 100 people the same spec with the same characters, with the same outcome, and I'll get 100 different books back. Right. Even within the same sort of subgenre, if I say write it as a cozy crime, they'll all come back completely different. And that's something that I think aspiring writers should always take to heart, is that every story has been told, but you've not told them. So get writing.
Wow. What a wonderful piece of advice, actually. Yeah, that's lovely. And obviously, that can be applied to so many things as well. You don't necessarily have to be a writer. You could be an artist, a musician. You could be an entrepreneur, even, like.
Absolutely. Kind of... There was I saw an interview recently. It was an old interview with Michael Keaton, the wonderful actor Michael Keaton. And he talked about attitude towards his work. And he said that he spent the vast majority of his early career seeing an audition as a barrier to get to the work. The audition was what he had to do in order to start working on the role. And he said one morning he woke up and he was like, I've got an audition today. Actually, do you know what? This is work. This is what the job is. The role isn't what the job is. The audition isn't something that you've got to get through to get to it. It's like, I'm getting up and I'm going to work today to audition for this particular part. And if I get it, great. If I don't get it, that's fine. We go to the next audition. But this is what the job is. And I've always said that in the workshops, and it really struck a note with me, actually, because again, you can apply that to so many aspects of life. Writing is a really, really good example of it, because I see all the time on social media, and I have aspiring writers coming to me getting really frustrated. They've sent out their manuscript to a dozen publishers, 100 agents, and it's all rejection slips and things like that. And I always try and say to them, I go, you absolutely are in your right to be disappointed, but don't see getting an agent, getting a publisher as a hurdle to get over to become a writer. You're already the writer. You've written what you're working on. You're already the writer. This is as much part of the job as having the books on the shelf in Waterstones and independent bookshops and doing things like this. It's as much part of the gig, because that's the thing. Like, even when you get an agent, and even when you're contracted for 2, 3, 4 books or what have you with a publisher, you've still got to pitch your ideas. You've still got to pitch the next in the series. You've still got to say, do you think this might work? It never ends. Obviously, when you start out doing it, you have to get your foot in the door, and getting the foot in the door is the hardest part of it. But don't ever see it as being a hurdle that you've got to do before you become the writer. You're already the writer, and this is what being a writer is. And it's frustrating. You want to tear your hair out at times, and it never goes away. But that's why we do it, right? We do it because we love it.
Oh, I feel so inspired. Oh my God. No, but that's brilliant. Wow. What wonderful advice. Actually, Claire hopped back in the chat to say that's great advice. Thank you. I think a lot of people will be able to kind of mull that over the coming days. I think I will have to as well. Like, that's really, really interesting advice. Thank you. So I'm sort of looking at the time, and I think we should wrap up soon, but kind of to close off, I really wanted to ask you kind of, a lot of people here, I think, will have read or listened to the Bingo Hall Detectives, but what kind of can we know if, obviously the book is out, but kind of if you haven't read or listened to The Village Hall Vendetta yet, which is coming soon to the Listening Books catalogue for those of you who are Listening Books members, what should we know? What should we know about this story?
Certainly. So Jason and Amita are back, and they are once again on the hot on the heels of another killer. This time it's a local businessman has a local boy done good has bought a painting which is reputedly cursed, Buttermere at Dawn. And he's bought it at Sotheby's, and he hired Jason to write the story, to do the publicity for it. And as he takes it back up to Penrith, he's bought the local village hall, which is a sort of crumbling mess. And he's going to get it. He's going to do it all up, and it's going to be a permanent shrine to the artist Elvira. And before the grand unveiling of the painting in its spiritual home, he is found murdered in his car. And of course, lo and behold, Jason and Amita put their noses in where it's not wanted, and they have to try and catch the killer, while the police are very much trying to catch the killer at the same time. And it's lots of twists and turns. A lot more of a lot more of Cumbria is covered in this book, which is great because I love Cumbria. It's a wonderful place, and there's loads and loads of. The great thing about Cumbria is that one of the reasons that I decided to set the book there is not only because I've got a lot of kind of family history there, but it's a wonderful place for human conurbations. Towns, very small villages. Carlisle obviously is a big city, but also endless countryside, and the Lake District as well, which is sweeping and dramatic and all the rest of it. So being able to explore a little bit more of that, and then obviously in the third one, which is due out next year, we get to do it again. That was one of the things I was very, very lucky, very, very privileged to have won the Lakeland Book of the Year prize for fiction for the Bingo Hall Detectives. And
congratulations!
Thank you very much. And one of the things that I said in my speech was, because funnily enough, it was on the banks of Ullswater where the first book was. And I said in the speech that I felt, not that I ever felt that I didn't have that vindication, but having an award from the area that it's set in felt very much like I'd been accepted as a 5,000 mile away Cumbrian, which is really, really nice. So it's a beautiful landscape. It's a wonderful palette on which to paint murder mysteries and have horrible things happen to lovely people. I'm very, very lucky to have that. And yeah, so the Village Hall Vendetta. Actually, as we speak, it's out next week here in Canada, which is very, very exciting because the publishing schedules are slightly different. I get to relive the wonderful launch of it next Tuesday, which is it's a week today, in fact. Yeah, so
wow.
It's exciting. It's great fun.
Really exciting. Yeah.
Wonderful fun.
Are you going to be doing quite a lot of work kind of on the promotion?
Well, the thing is, where we stay here in Canada, we're about 4 hours drive away from the nearest biggest city, which is Edmonton, and there's a whole load of stuff that HarperCollins in Canada have got lined up for me, which is great fun. The weird thing is, because of that that slight change in the publishing schedule, I have to be careful to know what I'm talking about. Not that I know what I'm talking about at the best of times, but I did a festival in Toronto at the start of June, and I was there to talk about the Bingo Hall Detectives. But the Village Hall Vendetta had just come out in the UK in the May, like 3 weeks before, and that week before I went to the festival, I just submitted the first draft of the third one.
Oh gosh, so no spoilers.
I genuinely didn't know if I was coming or going, and I had to look down at the book in my hand to know that was the one I was talking about. And then, of course, I started panicking midway through my talk and the panel and stuff like that, going, "Oh my God, am I giving away details that are in the third one or in the second one?" Oh, it's ridiculous, Emily. Honestly, it is. And as we've established over the course of this show, that I am not the brightest spark in the engine. So it's hard enough at the best of times, let alone actually giving me complicated things to have to deal with. But lo and behold, there we go. I think I managed to get through it. I think.
I'm sure you did wonderfully, and best of luck with kind of the upcoming promotions for the release. I hope the launch goes well on your side of the pond. And yeah, I think we should probably wrap things up there because we've had you talking long enough. But yes, thank you so much to everyone who's joined.
Thank you very
much to Virtual Village Hall, run by Royal Voluntary Service, who've helped facilitate this entire thing. So thank you very much. We've got thanks coming in from people who've joined. Thank you to Francesca. Thank you, Paz Barling. Got lots of people saying thank you. And yes, of course, thank you to you, Jonathan. You've been wonderful to talk to.
Not at all. Thank you to you, Emily. A wonderful host.
Oh, well. Oh, you. What did you say earlier? Oh, you. But yes, Jonathan's book, The Bingo Hall Detectives, is already on Listening Books if you are a member. And if not, please do visit our website. If you have any kind of print impairment and you live in the UK, we might be able to support you. And if you are a Listening Books member, watch this space because the Village Hall Vendetta will be coming to our collection very soon. So yes, I hope everyone has a lovely rest of the day. And I think we will leave it there if that works for everyone. Okay, take care, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.